Welcome or welcome back to my channel. I'm Hannah Blackwell, and today we're going to talk about all of the series that I want to continue in 2025. There are a lot of series here. I actually think that I have 27 books to talk about, so obviously I'm not going to be going into great detail. These are all books or like series that I really want to continue in 2025. The only ones that are not on this list are books that do not have the next book out yet. So all the books on this list have another book out that's already been released that I want to pick up in order to continue on the series. Do I think I'm going to actually continue all of these series? I really hope so, but obviously 27 is a lot and I may have to do some DNFing or just, I don't know what I'm gonna do. It's a lot of series to continue, especially considering all of the series I want to start in 2025. And this is also with me DNFing some series too. Like, there are series that I have decided that I'm not continuing on. I don't know if I'm going to do a video on that. It might be something I do on my Patreon where I talk about all the series that I've decided to DNF. I will be changing my schedule to Tuesdays and Fridays from now on. So I will be actually posting 2 to 3 Patreon videos a month on my Patreon and then doing 2 videos a week on my regular YouTube channel. And I think that's just going to be easier to kind of keep up with. This whole 3 videos a week schedule has been a lot, especially with the holidays. I think it's time to taper it down and make sure that I do something that is just like more doable long term. If you haven't already subscribed and you have been watching my videos, please click the subscribe button. You can click the notification bell if you want to be notified every time I post new videos, so you don't even have to worry about what my schedule is, what it's changed to, all of that jazz. Like, you can just get notifications and it's much easier that way. All of my social media is linked down below in the description, and with all that out of the way, let's get into this list of 27 series that I want to continue on in 2025. That's ridiculous. This is just ridiculous. So the first one is Flame Cursed Fae series by Eliza Reign. So book 2 is Of Frost and Feather. I read the first book recently and I really enjoyed it. It is Norse inspired. There is like a war academy in order to train to become a Valkyrie. Our main character is sent to, and there's a slow burn romance with a shadow daddy. It's just really good, fun. The books aren't super long. The world building is not super intense, and it's just like one of those like fun fantasy romances. Like, if you think of like Holly Renee or something like that, but less spicy. I would say this is less spicy than Holly Renee for sure. I really enjoyed the first book. I'm looking forward to reading the second one. Next one is another, I would say it's popcorn-y. This is Kate Golden's Sacred Stones series. I read A Dawn of Onyx recently and really enjoyed it. It was another 4-star, and the next book is A Promise of Peridot. I have this book on reserve at the library. I'd love to pick up a copy, but I'm trying not to really spend money on books right now. I want to continue on. There's 2 more books in the series, so I definitely plan on finishing it out in 2025. In this world, every region represents like a stone. So our main character is from the kingdom of Amber, and she is taken captive by the Onyx King. She's a healer and he needs her abilities. I really liked the first book. I am looking forward to continuing. The next book is by Penn Cole. It's the Kindred's Curse saga. I read the first book. I gave it 4.5 stars. That was Spark of the Everflame. I've actually recently bumped that up to 5 stars because I felt like I keep thinking about it, and the reason I didn't give it 5 stars in the first place was just that I thought it could get even better. Well, luckily I'm someone who actually gives out 6-star ratings, so if it does get better, I'll just give it a 6-star, if that makes sense. Like, there's nothing stopping me from giving it a 5-star. If it was a 5-star book, give it a 5-star rating. Sometimes I think I can just kind of like get in my own way with my ratings sometimes. Anyway, because I can't stop thinking about it, I bumped up the first book's rating to 5 stars, and I really want to read Glow of the Everflame. I think it could be a 6-star read, and I just can't wait to get to it. This is just a really good fantasy romance that's more world building, more character development. It's a little bit deeper. It's got a larger page count, and it's just been a really good time so far. I'd really love to finish out the Zodiac Academy series this year, and so the next book I have to read is book 7, Heartless Sky. I just read book 6 and gave it 4 stars, and I've really enjoyed this series. It's got like an academy setting. It kind of feels like very ridiculous fae fantasy romance Harry Potter fan fiction. It's got very CW vibes where it's just ridiculous. It's super dramatic. It's over the top, but it's also a lot of fun. and I'd like to finish this out. There's 9 books, so that would mean me reading books 7, 8, and 9 in 2025. The next one is by Elizabeth Helen. This is her Beast of the Briar series. It's a Beauty and the Beast retelling. I just read the first book in the series, and I really need to pick up book 2, Woven in Gold. I am actually planning on reading this with some people on my Patreon. On our Discord channel, the Cozy Corner of the Hideaway, we're going to be doing a buddy read of the second book. We just buddy read the first book, and I did that with April on there. So we're going to be buddy reading Woven in Gold in January, so I definitely will be continuing on with this series, like basically immediately in 2025, and I'm very much looking forward to it. Like I said, it's a Beauty and the Beast retelling. It's why choose. There's 5 love interests potentially. It stays very true to the Beauty and the Beast like retelling plot lines. So the next one is a book that I haven't read this series in a while, and this is by KJ Sutton. It's the Fortuna Sworn series. So I've read the first 2 books, but the last time I picked one up was over a year ago, and I really need to pick up Deadly Dreams. That's the 3rd book. I think that I remember enough to pick it up, but I'm a little bit nervous about it, and it was on my TBR to read this month, I believe in December, and I haven't gotten to it yet. It's like a darker fantasy romance for sure. Before you go into this, check out the trigger warnings, but it's also really good. It's got a love triangle in it. I think just the way the second book ended has made it really hard for me to continue, that because I'm just like so scared and heartbroken about it. We obviously have to talk about the Plated Prisoner series by Raven Kennedy. So I've read the first 4 books in the series. The next book is Gold. I picked it up in Softy and Effed it, but I do need to continue on. I am planning on picking that one up in January because the audiobook is coming out in January. So I'll continue on with that. And then after that, I have to read Goldfinch to finish out the series. So there's still book 5 and 6 to read. I've loved books 1 through 4. I have really enjoyed watching our main character grow, her character development throughout the series, and how she's really like come into her own. And I can't wait to continue on watching that. I'm just not a huge fan of some of the recent twists in the series. I don't think there was really enough foreshadowing. A lot of the stuff that just happened came out of nowhere, and I don't know. I don't know if I'm happy with it. Another one that I'm kind of like about, but I'm still excited to read is Rebecca Yarros, and I really liked Fourth Wing. I give it 5 stars. I Softy and Effed Iron Flame, and I also need to pick that one back up. It was on my December TBR, so we'll see if I can still get to it this month. And then Onyx Storm comes out in the second half of January, and this is like a Dragon Rider War Academy setting, and enemies to lovers with a shadow daddy, and it's very kind of like new adult fantasy romance. And I keep on like meaning to pick up Iron Flame, and then realizing that I don't really want to pick up Iron Flame. I don't know. And sometimes I'm like, I just have to realize if I don't want to pick something up, maybe I shouldn't, but I don't want to miss out. I think what I'm going to do is wait to see everyone's reaction to Onyx Storm in January. I might do that. And if we have another set of like negative reviews, like people are saying like, yeah, this series isn't it anymore, I might not continue. So this is tentative. This is tentative. The next I have is some alien romance series. So this one is Broken by the Horde King by Zoe Draven. That's the 4th book in the series. Now in this series, each book has its own couple, its own HEA, but there is an overarching storyline. It's about these barbarians who live on this planet, and they're very much like the Dothraki, if you've ever seen Game of Thrones. I liked book 1 through 3. I do think every book has gone downhill a little bit, and also the page count keeps rising, and I don't think that it's necessary. Like, I do think that these books could take some editing, and so that makes me a little bit nervous, but I've heard so many people say that this 4th book, Broken by the Horde King, is the best book in the series, so it still has me intrigued. Another barbarian style fantasy romance is Hole in the Soulless. Sorry, I said that the rest were alien, like the next few were alien, but I was wrong. Hole in the Soulless by Denali Day. I've read Sven the Collector. I've talked about it repeatedly. I keep on not picking up Hole in the Soulless, but this is like Wyvern Riders, Fated Mates, and Barbarians, Norse inspired, and the writing's really good. It's not spicy, but I do want to continue on. I just keep not doing it. And I've read the prequel novellas. So technically that's actually book 1 in the series. Okay, next is another series by Zoe Draven. So I read Desire in His Blood, and I need to read Craving in His Blood. And this is the same as her other series where each book follows a different couple. It has its own HEA, but there might be like an overarching plot line as well. And this is alien romance, and the heroes in this one are vampire berserker aliens. So it gives paranormal or fantasy romance, but it is alien romance at the same time. And I think this one's going to be enemies to lovers too, but I could be wrong. Next alien romance one I have here is Xveri Mate by Elizabeth Stevens. I read the first book in here, Taken to Varaxia, and it's one of my favorite romances of the year. I loved it. So I really need to get to book 2, Taken to Nobu, another series where each book has its own HEA, its own couple, but there might be like an overarching plot line. I do want to see what happens with the next couple in this one. Elizabeth Stevens is like a really great author. I highly recommend you check her out. And then we have Ruby Dixon, Ice Planet Barbarians. Obviously, I need to continue on in my Ice Planet Barbarians journey. I'm on book 12, Barbarians Redemption, and I just want to keep reading. Each one has its own couple. Check out the triggers. Check out the triggers for all of these. There's a lot of books that I didn't even mention that I probably should have. Just check out the triggers before you read any romance, really, at this point. I actually have some contemporary romance here to talk about. The first one is Savage Hearts by J.T. Geisinger. I read the first 2 books in this series. It's like a mafia romance series. I read them this year, and I think I gave them both 5 stars. I really, really enjoyed them. And this one is about a Bratva assassin. It says it gives like Romeo and Juliet vibes. I like to read mafia romance every once in a while. It's something that I just like to like stick in there like a few times a year, just fun, and I just like to do it. I like reading mafia romance. This is like pretty dark. This whole series so far is pretty dark, but also just a lot of fun. Very plot driven, very spicy. I also have Catherine Cowles on here, which might be a surprise, but I did read the first book in her Tattered and Torn series, and I enjoyed it. I gave it 3.5 stars, but I'm still putting it on here because sometimes I'm in the mood for this type of vibe. Very rarely, but it will probably happen at least once or twice this year. So I would like to continue on and read Falling Embers. This is an age gap, I believe, and I don't know if it's necessarily really second chance or if it's more like friends to enemies to lovers, but these people have been in each other's lives for a while, and I want to see what happens with that romance. This is like small town romantic suspense set in Western United States. And then I have a Katie Robert on here. I have read the first 4 books in her Wicked Villains series, and the next one I have to read is The Sea Witch, and this is another throuple. And this is with Prince Eric, Sea Witch, and Ariel. And I'm excited for this one. I'm very excited for this one. I think that's going to be a really good time. And that's like a dark, contemporary, very almost mafia vibes romance series where Katie Robert like is taking Disney villains and princesses and like flipping them on their heads and creating romances out of them, but they're not fantasy. It's not fantasy. Okay, I've got a couple cozies here. I have Becky Chambers. I read the first book in a Monk and Robot book series, A Psalm for the Wild Built, and I loved it, and so I'd really like to read A Prayer for the Crown Shy. My dad got me this for my birthday, I believe, so I'd like to continue on with that. It's like a cozy sci-fi futuristic series. It's a duology. I'd also like to read Sword and Thistle by S.L. Rowland. I loved Curses and Cocktails by S.L. Rowland. It's a cozy fantasy / cozy fantasy romance. It's queer, and I loved it so flipping much. I adored that. I thought it was even better than Legends and Lattes, but this is the next book in that series, and I still haven't picked it up, and I need to pick it up. I also would like to continue on with Shauna Maguire's Wayward Children series, so I have to read book 4, In an Absent Dream. I don't know which kid this is about, but basically this is about these adolescent kids that have gone through portals, different doorways to other worlds. Think like Alice in Wonderland or that kind of thing, but they've gone through different portals to different worlds and then came back to the real world, and now they have not been able to reacclimate to society in the real world, and they already found the perfect worlds for them, and for whatever reason they can't get back. It's really interesting. It's really cool. I also need to read Hellbent by Leigh Bardugo. This is the second book, and I don't know what the series is called, but the first book is Ninth House, and I gave it 5 stars. I loved Ninth House. I was gifted this book too by Jess, and I'd really like to pick it up and find out what happens next in the series. I meant to pick it up this last year and I didn't. It's like a dark academia fantasy. I think it might be set at Yale, and I really, really liked it. And yeah, I have to read the second one. I do still need to continue on with Juliet Marelier's series. Now this one, it's okay because the thing is that you're following different people that are from different generations of the same family. So each book follows a different person and it's a new generation. So it's not something that you really have to read like back to back to back. So I read Daughter of No Worlds, and it was one of my favorite books the year that I read it. I think that was 2022 maybe, and I still have to continue on. So I need to read Son of the Shadows, and I think this might be about the heroine's daughter, but I could be wrong. Obviously, we all know that Brandon Sanderson came out with the final book in the first part of his Stormlight Archive series. There's gonna be 10 books, so this is the first 5 books, and they have their own like plot that ends with book 5, and his 5th book came out, Wind and Truth. I've read the first 4 books, and I need to read Wind and Truth. I reread the first book in the series, and I don't know if I'm going to be continuing on with my reread or if I'm just going to read book 5. I also would like to continue on with the Tawny Man trilogy by Robin Hobb. I have to read Golden Fool. This is the 3rd series in the realm of the Elderlings, and it is an epic fantasy series that's very character driven, and we're following Fitz, who's the bastard of the king, and he becomes an assassin, and it's very character driven and gut wrenching and beautifully written. This is the 2nd book in this series that I have to read. I started it, softy enough'd it just because I wasn't in the mood. It's very slow paced, like all of her books are very slow paced. I mentioned this in another video recently, but yeah, I'd really like to reread The Jasmine Throne so I can continue on with this series. It is an Indian inspired sapphic political fantasy, and they have like really cool plant magic. It's very political, and there's a lot of characters. From what I remember, it was a lot of characters to keep track of even on my first read, so I think a reread would just be good for me in general anyway. And finally, I have 3 cozy mysteries I'd like to continue on with those series. First one is Ellery Adams' Secret Book and Scone Society. I need to read the Book of Candlelight. I've read books 1, 2, and 4 in this series, so I have to read book 3, 5, and 6. I'd like to continue on with that. It's set in Western North Carolina and the Appalachian Mountains, and it's these women who have become friends with each other and kind of like they've bonded over some of their past traumas and they're solving mysteries together. It is cozy, but because of some of the like trauma elements and the like healing elements, it's not as cozy as some other series. I do need to continue on with Nancy Warren's Vampire Knitting Society series. This is set in England at this knitting yarn shop. This woman goes to visit her grandmother, but her grandmother has been turned into a vampire and she has to take over her knitting shop, and she starts solving mysteries with the vampire knitting group that comes in and knits every night. It's just funny. It's funny. And then Ellie Alexander's Bake Shop series. I need to read A Batter of Life and Death. That's the 2nd book in this series. And this is set in this town where they do a lot of like Shakespeare plays, and our heroine goes back home after working on a cruise ship with her husband, and she is kind of dealing with her marriage that's kind of falling apart, and there's a mystery, and there's obviously going to be a mystery in every book, but I really, really liked this one. I had a good time with it. So there you have it. I didn't want to go into too much detail because, oh my goodness, I've already been talking for 25 minutes. And this has been a lot of books, and I was not about to give full synopses, but these are all the series I'd like to continue on. Will I? I don't know. If I didn't mention a series that you know I've picked up that I've enjoyed, but I didn't mention it on here, that's because I'm not sure if I'm going to continue or not. Or it's because I've fully decided not to continue, or it's because I forgot about it. But I probably didn't forget about it. I was pretty thorough looking through things. Most likely, I've either soft DNF'd or DNF'd the series. And I'm just trying to prioritize ones that I really, really, really want to pick up, that I'd be happy to pick up immediately. If you like this video, go ahead and click the like button and comment down below and let me know if you've read any of these series and which ones I should really prioritize. All of my social media is linked down below in the description, including my Goodreads, Instagram, my Patreon, and the link to the Hideaway Discord. Until next time, fellow readers, keep reading and living your best life. Guess you're trying to stay strong and fake a smile until I look away. But I've known you too long, it hurts to watch your blue eyes fade to gray as you fade away.